Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone who is listening to us right now. My name is Dr. Farhat Asif and I am with all of you again with another episode. I was away for 2 weeks, primarily 3 weeks. I was a part of the conversation. I was part of the one of the International Women's Forum fellowship program that I've recently completed. You must have been looking at my profile and the updates that I've been sharing. It is one of the most phenomenal experience that I have ever had in my lifetime. Changing Lifetime Experiences International Women's Forum is a global organization that has made possible for the women in different levels, in the C-suite executive levels, from being a businesswoman or entrepreneurs, working in different organizations, how to lead and advance their leadership in their capacities. This program has curated, this fellowship is of course over the year, and we have recently completed this program in Harvard Business School, and I'm so honored that many of the phenomenal professors, colleagues, coach, and I made the network of 40 women, not only 40 plus. We were there in the class, but of course, there's a 30 years of history of this fellowship program that women from across the world are part of. I'm so honored to represent Pakistan in this fellowship cohort, and I hope that we will continue having more women from Pakistan and from the region in this International Women's Forum. So, a bit of what I've been up to for lately, and now today I'm so honored that I've been partnering with one of the important publishing house, and of course, I've given the honor to interview one of the fearless photojournalist, a woman leader who has made her mark in the photojournalism in the world, representing and working for various international organizations, international news agencies. Asmaa Waguih, and she is based in Egypt, Cairo, and I am honored that she has given me the opportunity to speak to her about her work. And of course, recently Asma has partnered with one of the important publishing house, Helen and Company. They had published her book, which is an important contribution in the work that she had been doing. This book is called as Unfinished War: A Journey Through Civil War in Yemen, which has been recently launched on 11th June globally, and has remarkable virtual tour to the not only about her work and her looking at the war and the conflicts through the lens of a photojournalist. And being a woman, she has been phenomenal, and not only phenomenal, my inspiration now. And let us welcome her and see what she has to say about her work. And we will also discuss about her phenomenal, of course, over the years journey. We'll also discuss about her book and how we all can get inspiration from him. So let us welcome Asmaa Waguih and let us have the continuous conversations with her. Thank you so much, Asma, for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be with you.
Yes. Not only Asma has begun her career from as a freelance journalist, but she has also worked with the Reuters News Agency and many other phenomenal important news agencies globally. And of course, I have shared with you about the book that she had published recently and it's launched. I'll be also sharing the link that you can buy the book and see that through the lens of Asma, through the lens to our eyes of Asma, how she has witnessed the not only the war in Yemen but also across the region. We have been also discussing that how Asma came to Pakistan as well. We'll discuss that later. Asma, while we are discussing, one of the important things that we would like to know about more about your specific experiences is that what has ignited you to choose a photojournalism as a profession, and of course photography, and how you bring shape the perspectives and drive in the field. So let us begin with that.
Sure. Actually, it's actually the way I started photojournalism was actually quite interesting because I was basically a reporter for a few years, a freelance reporter, and during my freelance reporter, I was also traveling sometimes in my region, and for instance, I went to Jordan, Libya. It was during the Gaddafi time, and I had a few times going to a country, but actually I had a camera, but I was not thinking of myself as a photographer, just a reporter who sometimes have a camera to document some photos. It doesn't have to be great photos, but shows some of the, so that I can always present a full work for anybody who wants to, get my travel writing, any reporting. And also, when I was in Iraq in 2003, I went to Iraq, but this time for like, I was just thinking like the fall of Baghdad, when this happened, it's really changed my life completely, because for me now, I wanted to go to Iraq, because it was like, for me, it's not like a country. I'm going to cover. Even I didn't have an assignment when I first went, but I thought this Iraq at that time was like, maybe had one of the most powerful armies in the world, and it has it's for me like the shield to Arab countries from other countries. So, we think, and for me, the fall of Baghdad means not only the fall of Baghdad, but maybe it will impact a lot the Arabic countries. And for me, very important for me to go. Even I didn't know how to do the go the first time. I just said I will go, and I can write stories, check what's happening, and so on. And I also took at that time a small camera that actually even didn't belong to me, didn't belong to my family. We just it's like all these small digital camera was not really popular, like, just 2003. People started, of course, to use digital camera, but it was like big cameras are more expensive. I have my normal camera, and I lost it at that time, so I thought I will use this. And when I went, for me, it was a quite big exposure for, it's a big and very international events. Even by the time you arrive to Iraq, I was like in the middle of all this media from all around the world. And for me, it was a big exposure also to, it's a first big story to be exposed to. But also, if we're in many fields, video, photo, text, I saw a lot of photographers. And it's like, being inside a photo agency. Like, I worked first as a freelancer. I was a freelancer most of the time. I was based myself there for a few years. But the first time, it was to be inside the AFP. It was I had a stint with them, like, and I was even needed just to cover some reporting, like a fixer, translate things, help the photographers, and organize the photos. So organize the photos coming from all around Iraq, and speak with the Iraqi, and send their photos, and so on. So I was not a real photographer, but for me, I was helping them. And it was just all these international photographers coming. And while I was very much exposed to this for a short time, I was just like, it's just like, it was the first time it hit me. I would like to do this. I would just like to go like this photographer. And this is, maybe I just put everything on photos, and at that time I went, and I really needed to report, and I didn't have a job. So it's not like up to me. So I thought it took me a while to decide to leave reporting and focus on photography. Like, all the time I was in Iraq, I tried to do some stories, or if I freelance later for some. I remember for some time I was with the Los Angeles Times, with the Arab reporters, helping the other four Americans or whatever. And then I took some photos, and they used it. And so I was using my place to take photos and learn slowly. And I think I was very lucky. Maybe I was in my 30s. So maybe some people were like, 10 years younger than me, and they already started, and that
Yeah.
it's like, for me, the big exposure really helped me. And, it's just like being a reporter also helped me, because sometimes,
Yeah.
when you have a reporting background, you know what is needed in the photo, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it
Exactly.
helped. I remember we had in Iraq once a big explosion, and I took photos. I remember there were some foreigners inside the hotel, of course, and some companies, some whatever. And then when it hits I remember there was some foreign journalists, and some people were taking looking at the rubble and going, because they felt themselves they are hit, they are targeted. And I
Yeah.
took photos for them. And I remember I showed it to Iraqi guy in a photo agency, and he said, we needed to know the Iraqis, we needed to know what happened and how many Iraqis. I said, yeah, but it's now the foreigners are actually a big target in these hotels, and so to have in my photos those people is. And then the second day, in the first in one of the biggest Iraqi newspaper, my photo that he took from me, he bought from me, was the foreigners, was the first page. you know, like it's
Yeah.
like, yes. So for me, of course, it was like it's just it was very important for me, even though I was still reporting. When I was
Yeah.
taking photos, that I understood how much sometimes when you are also a reporter, you know, it's not that you point and shoot, even though if you're not, you know, very experienced photographer, but you have
Yeah.
all this knowledge from reporting and what is important for the media and international media to see.
Yeah, exactly. Asma, while you are discussing about these important, initiatives, or there's an aha moment, the epiphany that okay, I need to shift from being reporter to a photojournalist. It was a transition, right? And it was an exposure, and you were also telling stories to your writing, but then you moved towards more visual facts. But there must be some people who might have mentored you or who have guided you throughout the process, because without a mentor or a guiding force or somebody, or even we also need to take a lot of what you say knowledge to do anything that is possible that we really want to polishing it ourselves. For example, if you were transitioning from being a reporter to a photojournalist, so there must be people who might be guiding. So who are those iconic people that you think made a really remarkable shift and helped you to shape your visual identity, your way of looking at those photos, how you are how who are those people in your life?
Well, it's an important question, and it's also a little bit hard to answer because it's a when I was even a reporter and I was much younger, I was thinking sometimes when you're, you know, when you start freelancing and people don't want you as a, like, I didn't have a journalism background. So I studied literature and other stuff, and I did few things other than journalism. And when you want, it was always for me sort of when I was learning the process when I was reporting. I was always dreaming, like in a way, to find a mentor. Like I didn't even know the mentor in Arabic, or that I even would everyone would like. It would be important to have a mentor, but I think I was always looking for this mentor in reporting and in photography. But sometimes when you are in the middle of the work, and
Yeah.
if you don't find a mentor and think,
Yeah.
um, it's not like you don't have any mentors around you. Maybe you have many mentors, and you
Yeah.
start to if you don't find something very, you know, ideal like this, someone, a mentor who's always, you know, think that you're going to work, or because you are in this newspaper and they think you have very good potential and we're going to help her to do this and this.
Yeah.
Since I didn't have something like this in both reporting and photography, and I was like, for me, it was very important to ask or learn at my place, and checking um, and learning from the experience of people around me.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I see it, for example, when I was in Iraq, and I was even wanted to get buy my first, you know, a bit more professional equipment. I asked a few photographers. You know, in fact, it's funny. Like every photographer has a different set of
Yeah.
lenses that you
Exactly.
prefer. And then even by the time I went to buy my equipment, I was just like, I even changed on the scene, because I remember I had an American photographer, and he's really very good. And he said, well, why, if you use 24/7, it's good, but you will need, especially if you're Egyptian, and sometimes it's hard for you to go to the scene, you need this 70 200 millimeter lens. And I
Exactly.
said, fine. But then with the money now, maybe this will be a very expensive one. He said, oh no, you can use this Sigma instead of Canon, and so on. So it's like, it's not easy sometimes to change, and in the to change very quickly. And maybe you will need a lot of help, and you will need, and everyone also is different and have a different style. But I have to say, in Iraq, I had a lot of help well, I was not there really as a photographer, but towards the end, the last few months before I left, when I tried to, you know, learn by going and try to make a photo story, even though I didn't sell it yet, about girls in Iraq in the middle of the war, maybe, you know, playing, lifting weights or doing this or that, just on the side while I'm still reporting. So I check with photographers, and it was very good. I'm surrounded by very good photographers, and here
Yeah.
from all around the countries. It's not like especially Western. There is very good ones from also Baghdad. There was Lebanese coming, and they send a lot of Lebanese from different countries because they had experience with the civil war. Palestinian photographers. It was really full of different people, and you get help by asking people to check the photos, or after you take the photos. Sometimes if someone has to have a look, and it's yeah, I think it's very difficult to say a special name. Many people guided me. I can tell you it will be a lot of names. Like I would not even credit one person more than the other, because all
Yeah.
these photographers that I found there, and later when I decided to come back to Egypt and leave Iraq to concentrate more on photography, I found here some Egyptian photographers. Even some of them are working for more international media, have this also, or some of them even not working, but they have a good eye, an artistic eye. Some of them help by all of them helped. All of these people helped,
Yeah.
and even some photographers whom I didn't meet, by looking at their photos in the internet, Getty Images, Getty Reportage, other magazines. All these people I got inspired from without knowing them or meeting them personally. They helped
Yeah.
me. And for instance, there was a photographer, like when you see, especially like I didn't see a lot of Arab photographer. I remember at that time these Algerian photographers working for Reuters, and I said, "Oh, that's very interesting. I heard about it." I said, "Which is she's coming and to do also stories here and so on." But although you're even more inspired by the more men in the job than women there, but still it's also very
Exactly.
inspiring to find there women coming from any other country in the world, and
Yeah.
so you're inspired that yeah, you can do it. And in fact some women are doing it, and they did very good job. So I
Exactly.
didn't need to have very special example from Egypt, because I saw their good examples. And
Yeah.
then, for instance, I saw a lot of photographs from some female photographers from around the world on the internet covering other stories, and all these were inspirations, at the end.
Yeah. Exactly. And coming back to very important question, as you have also mentioned about there are very limited number of photojournalists globally. Your role working in some of the most toughest countries in the world, especially related to women, when you are covering Iraq, Afghanistan, and many other countries in the region, you are truly fearless. So one of the things that I really want to ask is that how challenging it was for you to cover these countries, especially when I mean the obstacles are that you have encountered, and the region that you are covering has been having a very hardcore stereotypical relationships and images about women, right? When you are covering a conflict, how you ensured your own safety, and how you ensured that the voices of the women coming from these conflict zone are truly projected, and also being woman yourself, how did you navigate all these challenges that we face? I know that coming from the country, yourself, and working in a country like Iraq, and of course going beyond these countries, coming to Pakistan, Afghanistan, and many other countries in the region, is truly challenging. So we would like to know more about these challenges that you face as a woman, and also somebody who is also covering many of the aspects that women are facing in these countries.
Sure. I actually, of course, all the people, all the women who cover these stories, even Westerner. In fact, I found, I remember there was American photographer, and I can't remember the name of them, but she did really great stories that actually focus on difficulties that women face in many countries, and actually in our countries, Arab countries, Islamic countries, and so on. So, in fact, even people who don't have the, I think, but for me personally, I found sometimes myself in many stories. I mean, when I found, I mean, being Egyptian myself, when I grow up and found sometimes, like I would say when I was very young, I was like, I almost can be a feminist, because I was like, why I cannot do this, why I cannot do this, why this is, why men can do this, why I cannot do this, why this is like in I don't expect. I didn't like. For me, it was a struggle when I was a teenager, a
Yeah.
struggle for myself, even with religious or political thing to say about
Exactly.
my rights. I really had to go through a lot of thinking and a lot of reading for to find out more about my identity, and how I can, how sometimes I have to differentiate between things that are more culture and more that's really more religious. It
Yeah.
took me a while even to find this, and unfortunately, again, I didn't have any mentor. I have to read and ask. Like I wanted, even at that time, mentor more than any other time, to find how
Exactly.
can I find my right on my own way, without being, it's hard to be accepted in your surrounding while really defending your right. And it's a
Definitely.
challenge in many countries. It's not only Afghanistan because of Taliban or something like this.
Exactly.
That it's very challenging in many countries. And
Yeah.
it's for me, yeah, for me it was something that's really identified myself, like really in the late teenager. It was really a big thing for me. So when I take photos for sometimes some women, I find myself sometimes in many women, and I feel it's very hard to sometimes to not to take photos, because once I'm taking photo, I don't think of anything except for taking photo. Otherwise, but like I see myself in many situations where I see women who don't have the rights. They are in the middle of even a conflict, and they have to do many things in like I would say, maybe let's talk simply about Yemen, since the book is about Yemen. I mean, in
Exactly.
Yemen, I really felt very much like, how can women be have this like, really, women there is like, they can drive car, they can do this, they can do any, they can work in many things, they are researchers, it's not like they are deprived of anything. But it just with this traditional society that
Right.
women has to be completely covered, and sometimes don't have like, many of them accept themselves from the environment, and there's no problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's just also hard, I'm sure, for many of them. And I yeah, to be have this role in the society where men are actually working a lot. They are working a lot at home, and they are dealing with the aspects of the war much worse. Because at the end of the day, some Yemeni men, they are still waiting there, here in the front line, between there and their families. But the women has to take all the other work for the with the kids, the psychological effects of the kids. They have to work hard. And when people are displaced, I'm sure women and kids,
Exactly.
they have more, they suffer more than men, because men also suffer, of course, from this instability. But
Exactly.
they can, the Yemeni men especially, they don't feel that the men are their home, because they
Yeah.
can go in the
Exactly.
evening, sit with other men, and to discuss things in the cafe. But women has to take to bear all the consequences of the war, and still
Exactly.
deal with lack of water, lack of electricity, still cook, still take care of the kids and their studies and all this. And I think it's yeah, you see yourself with all these people, and all the time that it's I mean, you're going in a place, you're not changing anything from the place, but you see it and you discuss it, and you try to take photos, because at the end of the day, I'm not biased to anything, I'm go and take my work
Exactly.
and leave. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, this will take us to. I also would like to share that those who are currently watching us, you have the opportunity to ask question to Asma. Any question that you would love to ask, we'll be discussing more about Asma. One of the phenomenal things that recently happened is about your book that you had launched, which is something which is a more forward approach of telling your stories. Unfinished War: A Journey Through Civil War in Yemen, which is published by Helen and Company. What are the specific experience in a moments that are inspired you to write this book, and what are the turning points that you thought, yes, I need to document Yemeni conflict through my photographs and through my work that I've been working on? So Unfinished War, and a journey through the civil war in Yemen. What has been the pivotal moments that you thought that I should be writing this important book? Because when you look at the photographs and the storytelling, the way that you have done is phenomenal, and it gives us the more glimpse of the civil war that is happening right now in Yemen, and of course the spill effect of that war. So let's just share with us the experiences that has led you to write that book.
Sure. Actually, I started going to Yemen in 2016. I was at that time working for Reuters, and actually even earlier, 2005. Basically, I was here covering the Arab Spring, and I was just wanted to go even much earlier also to Yemen for even as a tourist and so on, but it didn't happen for some time. A couple of times, and then when all this was happening in Yemen, I didn't cover Yemen when I was in Reuters because I was more needed in Egypt and Libya and other countries. And when I left, I thought I even before leaving Reuters, I was just even started to apply and check how people go and try to send my papers to a photo to Sana'a, yeah, to the and so for me, this was the 2016. I first went, but from 2015, I remember my Reuters colleague, the Yemeni reporter, was in the office, and I told them at that time it was still the Houthi militias were took Sana'a, and it was before and was like a bit earlier, and but at that time when he was in the Egypt, I remember for some time here he was the started the yeah Saudi led coalition started to make this campaign, and they told him you have to go
Yeah,
very quickly back to Yemen because when this started all of a sudden, and I remember I said it was there was no flights, so he would not go back to Yemen by flight, so he had to go through the sea, and I said at that time I told him I want to go with you. Please convince my boss that I will go with you from the seaside because then it will be all these people want to go and so on. I will try. And he himself was just thinking about what happened to his country, and it's just like he was supposed to go and take a course in doing some hostile stuff and so on. And all of a sudden this happened, and then we couldn't go. Everything was a big. It was a big mess. Like even to go through this we had to go and ask we had to go to the embassy of Djibouti. And it's funny that the embassy of Djibouti has some people who has Yemeni origin because Yemenis are from all the countries, you find them in many countries, all Africa from, and it's like, and he said, now I go to, we went with them to try from Djibouti, and he said, we need these papers and so on. He said, like, what papers? Actually, Djibouti country, like, even has some, and but it was a big mess, and we decided to wait for a little time. And even my boss didn't want me at the end, and he said, "No, we have people there. It's like going to be a big mess. It's his country; he has to go and so on." And anyway, so it was going back and forth. And when this happened, and when I was thinking like I can't go, and actually I was injured when I was in Reuters, so they didn't want me after this to go really anywhere. So like whether
yeah,
it's real war or some other things. And it's by the end of the time, yeah, by the end of the time, I just like I'm going to go. So while I was just getting my papers ready, like just finishing, I applied to go to Yemen. And 2 weeks after I finished, I remember I was just like, it was actually the matter. Even these 2 weeks was just waiting for the Houthi to find all the everything ready, And then I got into the flight. And when I went to Yemen, I didn't have any clue what I'm going to do. And this is typical me. Even before Reuters, I used to be a freelancer as well as a reporter, and I always went everywhere without knowing what is going to happen. And I never really even don't know. When you go to the place because you just want to go there and to
yeah,
see what's happening and how this happens, and and
yeah,
and then you start to know and you start to get immediately ideas when you are in the place. That's at least
exactly.
my style. At least I
Yeah,
know. Yeah, and when you are experienced in the same place in the same country, then of course, and you have a history of the and the background of what happened, But this was always my style, at least. And I went there and started to go back many times, and each time for a different reason, for a different city, because every city has its own background, and whether it's run by the militias or its pro-government forces there, and it's has a different way to go, and it is different. I focused every each time to go about certain place because there was something in particular happening there. Like when I went to the Hodeida. Hodeida is actually a very big port. It's the most important port in Yemen, which maybe 70% of all the food and everything we used to go there. And it was the when the Saudi-led coalition also was also. There was a quite embargo for many things because the Houthis can also take weapons from this, so it also affected the country for food, and it led to really humanitarian disaster and all this. So it's important, but I couldn't make it from the Houthi side. So in fact, I never seen the port. In fact, I was in the other part of Hodeida where it was freed from the Houthis, and I couldn't they were about to reach the main port, but then they stopped when I was there in 2018. So I think I went in different cities just to cover the most the story there, and not necessarily because something happened there. I mean, there's Aden. I went back and forth, and it's there are the separatist movement and so, but it's when you go, you feel you want to see what happened and talk to people and check the humanitarian side and the effects of what happened. You don't necessarily have to, in journalism you can get someone to to be honest, even if you're taking photo of some protest, for instance, you can go to a
Exactly.
protest or a war, and then sometimes you can just go to see the aftermath of the protest, and it still will be photos, because of the things
Exactly.
are broken, people left the stuff, people closed down the shops. So there's always this story, and there is aftermath and how it affects the life there, and so
Yeah.
it happened in many years. I go to different places, and I think it's by 2001 or 2. I think even before this 2001 and earlier, when you felt like I was in the Maghreb 2021, and it was at that time. It's funny, Maghreb is a very important place, but I always thought when I'm always going, and it's just always difficult. Hadramaut is very far. It's very far from everything, and it's in a highland. It's close to Sana'a. And when I first went in 2016, this place you have to go. It's a very long trip, and already after my job and
Yeah.
my injury, I had a problem with my back, and I thought all the time I was another. Uh, how can I go there, stay in the car for many hours? I remember the doctor told me I shouldn't be staying, and this is very, very, very bad now to go and all. So I feel I always
Yeah.
delayed. But once I know at that time it was a big story, I forget about all this, and I said I will go to Ma'rib from any place, from Hadramaut, from
Exactly.
Aden, whatever it takes many hours, because
Exactly.
now it's not a choice for me to go because I should go there. It's much going on there. So 2021 Marib was very
Yeah.
big, and it was a lot of fighting, and the horses went very close to the city, and it was a big deal.
Exactly.
So I went finally to Marib, and it's and for me it was at that time, maybe at that point, I can't remember exactly the date when I thought I need to. Now is the situation, and the more you ask Yemenis what's happening,
Exactly.
you started to feel how much as a proxy war, for some reason everything comes
Exactly.
in an end like a stalemate, like everywhere it's still
Exactly.
stopped, but it's nothing moving, even
Yeah.
now with the
Exactly.
truce. Yeah, if you ask Yemen,
Yes.
okay, it's good that there is not a direct war, but everybody
Exactly.
is standing still at the place. People who are displaced are still displaced. How can they go
Yeah.
back while politically the situation is not solved? It has
Yeah.
to be solved politically, so they can say to people, now you can go, because we can guarantee that we're not going to be, because their place is still
Exactly.
stay as a sort of front line if anything happened. So I mean,
Exactly.
this is the time maybe when I thought it's time to, and there is not always a special time. It could have been before or after, but I thought that's a good time. And you don't necessarily to cover. Yemen is also very big. I haven't made it to some cities to which are also, I mean, everywhere can be important. It has population and so on, but it's hard to cover everything in one. Covering any situation can take different books, different shapes. And it's different from a writer. Are you there? Hello? Hello? I find. Hello? Hello? Dr. Farhad, can you hear me? I can't hear anything. Yes,
And yeah, great.
brilliant. You're here.
We were just live, and there was a glitch on the internet. We were discussing about your journey, about your work, and
Yes.
of course about your book that you have recently published. And I think that when you were sharing about your book, what is most important is that you went to a conflict zone to understand the conflict zone, not just only by your photos and your photography, but you want to make a sense out of the a sense out of the what the conflict does look like, for example, and the evolving situations there. And it is very fearless of you to be there in right there in the conflict zone where the active war, or not primarily a full-blown war, but an active war was going on. And one of the things that is important for us to understand from your work is that as a freelance journalist, especially when you are writing that book, did you when you were making that headways into the conflict zone, and you thought, why not, I should cover this important conflict which is impacting the region, especially Yemen's impact on creating this Arab revolution, and where there are a lot of people who had been instrumental in creating ripples across the region as well. And this has created a lot of tensions in the region, especially in the Middle East. um, what are the various challenges that you face, Asma, in covering that conflict? especially when you are building a photojournalism and photograph through your narrative building, and what are the essence that you thought this is the cohesiveness that I should portray a visual image of a country going through a civil war. So although when you are telling a story, you write a narrative, right? But in a photojournalism, you need to make a cohesive images so that you can tell the story in a relatively cohesive manner and look at those images in a way that people understand that. So how did you manage that? I mean, telling the story through images of that civil war, and which is also a powerful instrument that you have used in the book as well.
Yes, of course. I think my I think I hear myself in the mic a little bit. It's
Yeah,
fine for you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'm good. Yeah,
Yes. So I
yeah,
think
go
I'm
ahead.
still hearing, still listening to myself again. For you, as long as you can hear well, it's fine. But I'm
Yeah,
hearing
I can
myself
hear you. I can
echoing.
hear you. You so you are into the studios twice.
Yes.
Can Yeah. Now you are here.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Now we are good.
the challenges I have maybe been when I went there, I um, I just went on my own to check and to it's I think it was helpful that I'm a reporter as well. I was reporting and I know how to get quotes and to
Exactly.
write about the subject and so on. So for me it was two ways. I didn't think of myself as only a photographer, but of course my main
Yeah.
focus is that I want to take photos. If I'm really frustrated
Exactly.
not to take photos, I feel there's the main essence is gone. It's not like I can
Exactly.
just write something and go. So, but
Exactly.
I think it was the main challenge I found through the time there, because and you also want to report at that time what was happening, and you want to send to some photo agencies or maybe even online thing when I can give a report and photos so that they can.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just the subject itself and the 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 subject of the war in the is like there about Yemen, how it's proxy war, and maybe it's. I didn't think that people, for many reasons. Sometimes it's just because something else is more important happening, so they would not.
Exactly.
And sometimes people would like to take photo, would like to take, and then it's. I think the main focus is that there was not many journalists there. When it doesn't mean
Yeah.
that they really would like we have someone there finally. But it's also the
Exactly.
lack of interest or lack of idea that it's this war is a more sort of really forgotten. They didn't want to, when they want to feel like they don't want to open the subject and they don't want to discuss it because it has different other stories on behind. Whether in some countries, get whether it's something from the Yemeni itself, because it's a very strange kind of conflict. Like when I was in Taiz, for example, now, and even in Aden sometimes, but Taiz was at that time a big example, because some of the people, like Taiz is really very many educated people. They call it the culture capital of Yemen. But
Yeah.
still, many people also are like, you see women like just some in Aden and so on. They walk
Exactly.
without covering their, just with headscarf, without covering their faces and so on. And they were really had a problem with many, the coalition give money or give weapons or be back the who are the good fighters. There are fighters who are from extremist background, and
Exactly.
whether they are because they are already there, because there's like the Muslim Brotherhood or the Salafist faction or whatever,
Exactly.
and all these people are a bit more, especially the Salafists who are not sometimes have they have big beard and they say we shouldn't take photo, like photo is not, like
Exactly.
they're just hardcore people. There's some people who came who was fighting along the Afghanis during against the Soviets, and they were also there,
Yeah.
and then actually at the end, and they were like fine because they went even they were what we used to call them the Arab Afghans, because they went They're not extremists. They just went for the, we
Exactly.
are against the socialists and all this. So they were fighting
Exactly.
against the and came. So they're also good. But actually, at the end, there was also elements from Al Qaeda there. Well, like I don't know how to find them, or I never been really that much in the front line. There were just very few
Yeah.
elements, maybe together with Salafists or some other thing. But actually, the nature of the conflict is like this. Sometimes, and that was even before the Yemen war, even during the civil war, even during the former president Ali Abdullah Saleh, he was using sometimes elements from both sides during his work just to get this against this or this, just and this kind of conflict is hard because you don't people will not like to take photos and they see those pro-government people fighting
Yeah.
the Houthi militias. In
Yes.
fact, they
Yeah.
don't know that the Houthi militias, they was literally at that time
Exactly.
Houthi militias. Ali Abdullah Saleh, after he first, basically, this I can tell you something. Maybe it look complicated, but it can give you a very good view for the people who are listening about the nature of the conflict. Like Ali Abdullah
Exactly.
Saleh, during before the war, he was using elements of Al Qaeda that's not really Al Qaeda, but also another kind of Al Qaeda which can work against his foods. So they were when I was in Taiz, I didn't know that there was not only Al Qaeda, which is like from Al Qaeda, but there was Al Qaeda who were used by Ali Abdullah Saleh, which is like not really proper Al Qaeda, and there is Al
Yeah.
Qaeda used by the other fools of the Muslim brother. It's just like
Yeah.
when everyone has, you can compare it with when everyone has thugs. I can have
Yes.
my normal people and I have thugs. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
and these are
Exactly.
good. Yeah, and then after this, when he was overthrown by the protest, in fact, at the end, he wanted to come back, and he allowed his former foes, al-Houthis, the Houthis, to get into and take Sana'a, and he was backing them up with his the Republican guards. So you can
Yes.
see now the situation in Taiz, which represent maybe all now in Yemen. Now
Exactly.
you have inside the city of there are people who are protesting, who are just people like our protesters here, educated people who like activists who just wanted democratic, stuff, and then with them, who is fighting people who are backed by the coalition, and they had to be at that time Muslim Brotherhood, Salafis, hardcore stuff, whatever. And maybe some elements of Al Qaeda were used in the middle because they were very good fighters, because they are against the Houthis from long time ago. But they were only very few elements that you will not find them, as for me in the city, you will not see them. Maybe it's just very small number. And then who is fighting
Yeah.
them on the outskirts, on the hills? Are Houthi militias backed by the Republican guards who are with the president, who were overthrown. So
Imagine.
now,
Imagine.
can you imagine what kind of conflict this is? And nobody was really now the Western media know that something is very bad going on there. When I was in the city, there
Yeah.
were like big Katyusha, Katyusha and RPG, not RPG, more mortars and Katyusha rockets were falling inside the city, killing civilians. Many civilians were killed by snipers, and those snipers, and there even there's some part of what we call them marginalized people or homeless people, or already having
Exactly.
problems even before the war. They were killed. They came to find some places, and they just find the place to live, and they were killed. And when they walk in places that got freed, they get their legs, they get injured by landmines. They don't have limbs, and they are
Yeah.
marginalized people who have nothing to do with the coalition or the Houthis or
Exactly.
Qaeda or militias or anything. And how many people I saw in Thais? There are many. And for the outside, countries, there is something going on there, and they can take, and they just take it, but nobody really cares. And many people didn't want to take stories because they say for them it's a very strange conflict. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they are
Exactly.
if they are small online thing, for them they don't know what's going on. And if they are really
Yeah.
big, for them, okay, they understand the difficulty, but they are
Yeah.
not willing to get much or pay much to show even more, more photos or more, and
Yeah.
so it was this is the most challenging thing when you think all this is going on and people really don't understand, and they have to be there, and many
Yeah.
Western journalists, they also
Yeah.
they were not there, sometimes on and off, depending on the situation.
Yeah, Asma, I truly understand what you are, saying, especially in these conflicts. Primarily, the lens that they use, global media lens that they use, is through surface sharing of the conflicts, not going deeper and understanding the real humanitarian issues. As you have also mentioned, that those who are innocent people who have nothing to do with both sides of the conflicts, the fearless journalists like yourself, and those who are freelancers and those who really empathize with the people on the ground, can, and through your book that you had also shared very important images of those people who had been, who have nothing to, I mean, the children, the women, I mean, those people who are in the streets, who have nothing to do with these conflicts and have nothing to do with the power, in fact. And you became the voice of those people. And it is a truly remarkable work that you had been doing. There might be, well, while you've been writing those books and you've been, looking and skimming through your photographs, I was really interested to know, apart from the complexity of this Yemeni conflict, which is sometimes becomes very hard for the global community to understand, and people like you can also simplify and help them to understand what are the actors who had been, there, and what are their positions, and sometimes they change positions as well, for the power sharing and for, for their own interests. One of the things that I would really like to share, ask to you, is about your book, where you've been skimming through your lot of, photographs, and what has been made a pivotal point where you think that this is something which should be highlighted at a greater period, because when you look at your cover page, the cover has its own story, and of course, how did this moment has influenced you in making the direction of your book, for example, the impact that your book is making for the readers, and helping them to understand the core messages that you want to share with them, because through your story, these images and narrative that you want to build, and of course, tell the true story, not just the story. It's about the true story that you want to build towards telling the war, and telling the story of those people who are there at the ground. So what are those moments and those images that you think that has really shaped the direction of the book as well?
Yeah, well, it's when through my journeys, of course, there are some moments at that time when I was taking photos and I didn't have an idea to have to try to collect them into the book or something.
In the book.
So of course there's always, as you said, pivotal points. Sometimes that's some shots, or sometimes there are, like, there's not a specific shot, to be honest, that made something, but maybe I would say sometimes when the landmines, the use of landmines in there is really very horrifying for me in Yemen, and it's when they are left for a long time, and people, and there are many countries in the world, and Egypt, myself, my country, we suffer from this. I mean, we still have a lot of big parts of the north, it's still a lot of landmines from the Second World War, and therefore till actually recently, I would say till recently means like maybe some areas now are completely closed. They were not taken because after a long time you cannot, it's not easy to take them out, you know what I mean? And in
Yeah.
I know that certain things, when they are left like this and without, and with the situation there, and in Yemen, the use of landmines by the Houthis is actually more often. Like, I think it's just the way they went into some places, and then planted so that they can win, and it's a very it's very severe, and many of the there are many points, many important time there when I felt it's a really very important story, and actually international media went and took a lot of photos, and for people who lost limbs and so on, But as a matter of fact, it's much bigger than few stories. It has to have um, more of a subject of many. Um, like I'm just a freelance reporter photographer. Like I cannot do something by myself, and I don't have this. There's a UN. There's many countries which are really putting figures, knowing what's happening, and they have people, and they work with locals there, and they know what should be done. So for me, my role as just a human being, let's say, and as someone who witnessed something, I thought
Exactly.
after going there different times how to collect a story. It's like till this moment, if when I speak to many Yemenis, every time I go, I discover things that I didn't understand because it's a very complicated story. And for me to try to put it in a simple way with my photos, and
Exactly.
while writing about the whole story, how it happened, how people feel about it, what is this religious background that the people were trying to say we should be here, we should not be here, who's fighting whom, and what is the opinion of these people
Yeah.
themselves whom I met, as easy as possible, because I told you I'm not a writer, I'm a photographer now. Even when I used to write, I write simple stories reporting, not
Exactly.
big books. So for me, this was also challenging to put it in a simplified way while quoting some people who know more about the subject, or talking to people there. And I have to say, some people were if I say here, like there's the very important person who helped me in this thing. There's many people who think, but I think sometimes you find like Muhammad Ghubairi, whom I thank him in the beginning of the book. He was my former, like because I left Reuters, he still was Reuters, but
Yeah.
he is there. He has a very good. He was a very good reader. He wrote books himself, something like a witness for how the fall of Sana'a. He's a writer himself, and
Yeah.
he told me sometimes about when I'm in the city, and then he said, this and this, and when I tell him something, and he writes me through WhatsApp, then I said, oh, then I go and talk to people also about certain points, or sometimes on my own, like it happened to one city, Al Baida, and I was on my own and met
Yeah.
leaders from tribal leaders, and then they
Yeah.
talk. And whenever I have any story, either him or the photographer he introduced me to, say, he said, this person will be helpful for you. Sometimes even
Exactly.
not by talking, by giving me contacts there. And
Exactly.
these people I remember this photographer I met in Aden, who was actually from the north, and he told me about how he left himself. He himself is someone displaced. It's like all these people who are displaced becoming photographers here and know the nature of the conflict, the nature of the conflict, because were involved themselves. There's no single maybe family there who is not involved in the war by means or the other. If it's not their place, if they are not displaced, they got a family displaced and they welcome there for some time. If they didn't
Exactly.
suffer from this, if they didn't suffer from militias, they suffer from the separate, from the conflict in the south, from the war when they were fighting north and south there. So there's nobody who is not involved in the country. So
Exactly.
in a way, to be honest, to say, I can say every place, everyone I talk to has, and help me to do this. So it's like, but of course, it's not easy as someone outsider to put it in a most simple way, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much for sharing these important insights of your work, especially when people are there to help you out. And of course, over the time period when you are into the covering a story, covering conflict zone, covering a war, this gives you more strength as well. You become more fearless. You become more, build your allies around to help you out. Asma, over the years, you have been covering most of the war zone, not only Yemen, you have been into many places, which have not primarily a full blown war, but you have been covering, for example, you have been covering Afghanistan, you have also covered Iraq, you have also covered Libya, Syria, and many other parts of the world. And primarily, when I look at your work, your most of the work has always been covering the conflict zones, which is very phenomenal, and of course very important as well when we are understanding the humanitarian perspectives or about the understanding of the conflicts at the ground. So I would like to ask you, what are the different similarities that you found over the time period, um, of the and differences in the conflicts and wars, and how this has impacted and reflect in your work as well? Because when I look at your photographs, when I look at your work as well, it primarily focus on the zones. And what are the differences and what are the various instances that you can share with us about the differences that we can find in especially in the war zones where you've been working as a fearless journalist? And I see that you have been so brave in covering those important regions where challenges are there for the journalists as well, to be honest.
Yes, actually, I think people who are it just think about like a journalist, like any human being. I mean, it's a kind of fear. Like sometimes some people can, over the time, you can't fear when you are in a difficult situation. You can be afraid all the time. There is a limit time for fear. It's not like you are fearless and you become more fearless. No, you're stopping to a place, just like a soldier. But I mean, a soldier is a soldier. He has to be more brave, of course, because he has a weapon. He goes very close and he knows that he can die anytime for his land. That's of course different. But I'm saying, in just facing a dangerous, facing a danger situation, it takes sometimes when you are, like, for instance, when I was in Iraq, for instance, working for 3 years, like, there's no one who would not be like facing this every day. There was not as a direct front line. There was a civil war, and anything can happen to your building. So
Yeah.
there was big explosion inside the market. So you don't have to be really someone who's facing this more than the other. And this is when the time that you discover that there is no front line. It's you either stay like this, and everyone Iraqi civilian is facing this. So you can say
Yes.
every Iraqi is fearless as well. You cannot say I'm the one who's fearless, becomes a thing. Yeah, I choose to be there while it's not my country. It's different. But you find that everyone has to, life has to go on. And I think you learn at that time. I think you learn slowly how to face situation. Is like I learned in Iraq how to maybe take care of myself, like because you go, and you can, anything can happen anytime, but you cannot think about it like this. If you think about it like this, you will not live, even as an Iraqi civilian there. And
Exactly.
this is all true about everywhere I go. Okay, man, if
Exactly.
we discuss something like Libya, there's front lines. Well, I have to be the front lines because I was working for Reuters, and sometimes the story is the front line because they are pushing to get Gaddafi and then finish the war. So at that
Yes.
time, there was everyday front line. There was sometimes you have to make another stories on the back, people even helping the soldiers in the front line, people cooking for the soldiers. There's always a lot of stories, but when it's front line, you don't choose. You have to be on the front line. So I
Yes.
have to say, I cover at that time I was a news. I have sometimes to cover certain stories, not necessarily because I like just to be on the most important story in the front line sometimes, but sometimes the story that's not that there's more story behind the front line, like it happened in Iraq when people were the soldiers trying to get to defeat ISIS, and the many civilians are leaving, and they are really stuck there, and so they are also very important because they are trying to escape. So it's not only about the soldiers trying to go and over the fight, but they are helping those civilians with kids and older people and sick people, whatever, and to get out of this area of the danger zone to go inside the city. And so there's always, sometimes you choose the story that's very important, and if it's the front line, then you have to be in the front line. And
Yes.
for also being not a soldier, you also have to cover yourself. You be in the cover in the field. So as we said, no story equals a life of a person. So of course there are their calculated risk as much as possible. And I would say after this calculated risk, if anything happened to you, I think about it. It can happen to me here in the street. It's not like
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, as we are coming to, of course, coming to an end of our conversation, however, I would not like to end this because this is such a phenomenal conversation that we are having, especially as many people who might be listening to you I mean, journalists who might be interested to, carry on this short forward, this work forward. So, as you've been covering the war zones, there might be some emotional times that you know when you are covering a war and conflicts. So what are the different strategies that you had used to stay calm and maintain your emotional well-being? Because I see looking at people who are mostly covering war and conflict have the challenges there in their emotional health, and of course um, their well-being as well. So what are the different techniques or the various ways that you had made sure that you are emotionally and of course mentally strong, or mentally remain sane, which is more or less challenging. And I hope that through you, many people who might be listening to you, young people especially, who are interested to cover the regions like these war zones, may be a helpful way of doing it.
Yeah, it's of course you learn also this over time, like you learn
Yeah,
even like you're learning reporting or photography, or you learn to try over time to be in control. There are moments when, of course, I remember once in Libya, I was all of a sudden I was with the anti-Gaddafi rebels, and they were like pushing, and then all of a sudden I found like we were in a place that's actually it's a fragile. It's like the area. It is not many people. Many people left. Yeah, many rebels went back, and there was a lot of the Gaddafi guys were really pushing so much, so the
yeah,
mortars were really coming very much, and I was like, wow. It's like I remember at that time I was just like, we're going to die. And I was just like, I remember I was at that time is the first time like I was like in a front line, because it was like it's just we're just we're like I was really a bit out of control at the beginning, and I said, we're going to like I was really trying to speak while I'm running away to get myself, to get myself
yeah,
up. And then I realized, and it's just like, and some people like we're not going through as it, you can't escape. Like I think it's important at that time to keep yourself in shape, because uh, at that time you can't really control anything that comes,
exactly,
like in your. So it's just the
exactly,
more you control yourself would be more
yeah,
helpful, because there is nothing you can do. And there are certain
exactly,
moments as well. So and certain areas, like and I mean, I remember at that time, later after this, I think there's sometimes there have to be few situations that happen, and then you realize that you should be more, it's
yeah,
like you even don't talk to yourself. You just feel after certain situation. Then in some other situation, you
exactly,
feel this is what you have to do in this situation. You learn over time. And also with
exactly,
with emotion is that with your emotion is like it comes and goes. It's like sometimes when you are in a situation, you just it I remember it happens sometimes in Yemen, or even in Iraq, or in any place, even sometimes in Egypt here, when you cover a
exactly,
story, and when it's very emotional and so on, you get of course involved, that you feel like in your situation, it must be very hard, and you are just
exactly,
there helpless. You cannot do anything to them, but more just document this or take photo. And sometimes, to be honest, it can be have a effect that you're a bit shameful, because it's shameful, but you know that you should take your photo, but it feels like,
exactly,
so I'm just here to take photo for them. And it's like, I remember once here, those people like in Egypt, when there were some people killed in Libya by ISIS, and they were and their families, the Christian workers were Egyptians or Christian, and they were killed there just because they were Christians, or it was very bad story. And I went there, was in the countryside, and when I was in the with the families, it was really very, it was very it was one of the most difficult, and it's not even a war zone, but it was one of the most difficult thing, maybe because there were also Egyptians like me. I'm not here even as an outsider, but some people were killed for no reason, and their families, it was a big disaster. They just want to make money there,
Yeah.
and the way it was killed, it was very horrifying. And I was really wanted to take photos, but it was also this feeling is like uh, I was just there, maybe consoling them first, and just trying to absorb the situation. It was very difficult to get the camera and just to try to take photos, because I was working for Reuters at the time. It was very difficult
Exactly.
situation like this. And then this is how it goes. Like you have to take your photo while without you learn how to deal with the situation, whatever it works.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah, your work is of course challenging. At the same time, you need to remain sane, and you need to cope with your emotional health and well-being as well. I mean, this is a phenomenal challenge that you have been facing over the time period. So one of the questions that I would like to ask you about, in the aspiring journalist or photojournalists who are really want to work in this field, especially women who want to excel and document the conflict zone, especially the country like Pakistan, country like Afghanistan, the Middle East, of course, Iran, and many other areas who really want to make an impact through their stories. What are your advice to them, and how? I mean, what are your thoughts? To help them understand that how they should be begin their career or in the middle of the career, what they should be doing with their aspirations.
Yes, of course, I will not say any technical help because technical also I learn over time because I didn't. Uh, but to go to any place, I think any aspiring journalist who want to go to any
Exactly.
country in the world is able to. And if it's a country that doesn't have any, issues, it's like I think. But to be honest, even a normal country, if even any country which doesn't have any conflict, I think the whole thing is the same. Because once you go to a place, you read about it, and or you just go and you try to absorb the culture and respect the
Exactly.
culture of the place and see the nature of the place, and read maybe a bit of history about the place, and take every challenge by itself, because I think there is no you can be in any place and it doesn't have any conflict, but maybe people are not used to that you come and take photos for them, and they will tell you, no, you have to go, you shouldn't take
Yeah.
photos. So it's just the
Exactly.
approaching any area is the same, whether there's conflict or not, by
Yes.
going to see the place. I sometimes approach some places here in Cairo, like I'm approaching a front line. I mean, if the people here, it's not easy to take photos here, so you just sit and go and ask people, can I take photo, or I'm doing this or that. So it's always approaching any situation in any country, or for a foreigner to go to some place where they don't have the it's just like even you know uh, it comes by gradually, because once you go and read about the story and know what's happening, and then I don't think there is any challenging will disappear by time, by making your rapport is very important, just talking to people and know how much you are interested in the place and in their history and their culture, or you come to cover something to show how this impact their life and so on.
Exactly.
By doing this in any place, people will respect it. And then once you are know, and there are many journalists, many photographers, and not there are many people, or even more than me, went to a place as complete outsiders, and they ended up going and be specialized in the place by going many times,
Yes.
and making more friends with the, or more close to the locals, and and they made a lot of photo books, and a lot of they become expert in the place, and they were
Yeah. Yeah.
totally outsider when they went. you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have seen also witnessed many photojournalists who came to Pakistan as well and became one of the experts. Similarly, I would also like to add what you, Asma, you are saying is that those who young people who are listening, for you to understand first of all the international photojournalist ethics and values that has been globally known, and whenever you are going to any country or any place, what are the values that you need to follow, of course. And then you also need to have specialized equipment. If you do not have the equipment, there is also one way of doing it, is that now there's also a norm, as digital media is very much into, there's a photojournalism has taken a new shape. As Asma, you will also agree with me about the citizen journalism, where people go and take photos which are videos and photos which are very much raw photos and raw footages, but you can also help many global companies and people like Asma to witness the first hand knowledge about any event or incident that is happening. So this is also one way of contributing. Then freelance journalism is globally very renowned and very respectable way of connecting with the global agencies. You can contribute as well, and many people who are my followers, most of them are students of the international relations subject. Your role as international relations students or journalist students, you can also contribute in sharing the stories as well. Asma, I would like to ask you, before we leave and before we sign off, one last thought that you would like my those people who are listening to us right now, um, to leave us with the day. Share with us that what exactly is your last thought. I mean, not the last, because we will be having the continuous conversation later on. But for those who are listening to us, what are your thoughts about, and of course, your book as well? Do share about that.
I mean, in general about my book.
Yes, yes. A book as well, in general as well, whatever you would like to share with all the listeners who are listening to us right now.
Yes, no, I will. I would like to actually just say, since you talked about different aspects of life or of, people who are, covering stories, whether it's hard stories or even we
Exactly.
all cover different kind of stories and very simple stories. It's I think the challenging is the same, and for many reporters and photographers, and it's with practice. I think everything is like with the more with the more knowledge, with more experience, then you yeah, everything it really seems very simple at the end. And I have to
Yeah.
say I'm very glad. I need to thank really my publisher Helion and Company, because it's very important to find people, and
Yes.
like they are specialized in the history of military history, and they are keen to show. Sometimes when you're really very specific, it's not like
Yeah. Exactly.
different kind of wars. In any war, there are many aspects, many armies, different kind of history at a certain time. And I think I was very lucky that for them it was very important to have this book and show the history of Yemen even through photos. So most of the publication are written, text, but
Yeah.
I think it was really very. I'm really very glad. I was really proud that I found such a company as even they care about Middle East. I mean, all over history, all over the world. But they have a lot of books also in the Middle East and my region. So it was very. I was
Yeah.
very lucky actually. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asma, for highlighting this important aspect, because there are many publishers who do not primarily understand what exactly that author or a journalist or somebody like yourself would like to convey to the readers, in fact. And we are glad that Helen and Company has made this beautiful connection between myself and Asma as well, and we are sitting down here talking about Asma's work, about Asma's journey through the civil war in Yemen, not only in the Yemen and conflict zones, but globally. She's a renowned photojournalist. You can follow in our podcast underline. You can see the link of the book as well. You can pre-book. You can buy that book as well from the publisher. Helen Company has made this conversation possible. I'm so glad to partner with them and sit down with Asma discuss many aspects of the photojournalism, and not only photojournalism but journalism as it is all. And one of the highlight of our conversation that I would really like to share more and emphasize more is that whatever you do, you have to do it with your passion, with your knowledge, with your preparedness, with your wit, and leave the rest of the work to the to I mean, you want to do the best of the best possible, and then you leave the rest to the fate, whatever it takes you to towards the places. And what has we learned from Asma today is that it is not just that you go towards your passion, and the way is always open for you. I'm so glad, Asma, that you had taken the time out, sat with us, shared your journey, shared your book and your inspirations, your aspirations as well in future as well. And I hope that through your book, many of the young people who are listening to us, many of the experienced people who are listening to us, may understand the civil war, the war that is happening in Yemen, or understand the conflict, which is complex, which is uh, which is difficult to understand. But through your lens, I hope that people may understand this conflict much better, and realize it that complexity is not that's just only complexity. You need to have people like Asma who can help you to simplify those conflicts and understand it, the real dynamics on the ground. Thank you so much, Asma, for your work, and I
Thank you
hope
so much.
that we'll have yes, we will
It
continue
was
having the
very
conversations
nice
in
to talk
future.
with you, and it was really pleasure to be with you today. Really thank you because you discussed very important elements of the conflict in Yemen, and you really cared, and I really thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asma. Stay with us. We'll be moving. We'll be speaking to all of you with another first woman leader who has made her mark in her field, and I'll be bringing her in our conversation in next week. Let us see who will be joining us tomorrow. Till then, sign off. I'll say, take very good care of yourself. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening to anyone across the world. Thank you so much, everyone.